The sound of a breath in the void, silent yet felt. That is where Zenos' story begins. That is where Endwalker were Zenos, not an end but a mirror, a reflection of the void's will, unbound. Of a breath in the not a moments in hero's end void, but a thread in the tapestry. Source yet felt rages on that voids where will Zenos' story begins. Shadows move, questions linger. How deep does the deception run? Zenos' end was no end, a mask slipped. The war for the source never ceased, it shifted. The final days return not as myth but reckoning. Fandaniel's return births a cycle unbroken, a shadow reheated. If the rejoining was a lie, then every victory stands on borrowed time. The void breathes through fractured wills, and Eärzia's fate hinges on a question left unspoken. Who else walks, bound not by purpose but by puppeteer? The source burns, the war restarts, the deception deepens. The shattering of Aetherese left 14 wounds in the cosmos. One bled into the 13th reflection. Darkness flooded its heart, twisting light into a hollow mask. Zenos Galvus was never a hero. He was a fracture given shape, a vessel for the void's hunger, his sacrifice in Ulda's ashes. A thread pulled in a tapestry of lies. The 13th's corruption birthed Voidsent not as accident, but as design. A war to bleed the source dry. His final breath in Endwalker's light was it his own, or the void's whisper, masquerading as redemption. The source still burns, the war still rages. And in its embers a nameless shadow moves, unchained from flesh yet bound to a deeper puppeteer. The reflection's heart beats with stolen light, the Voidsent swarm not by chance but by echo. What remains of Zenos now, a shell. A weapon or the first breath of something darker, wearing his face like a mask. The deception deepens, the war restarts. And the source still waits to be unmade. The light that unmade Zenos Galvus was not purity, it was a shatter. 1,000 splinters of his will, each sharp as a Voidsent's twisted hunger, dissolving into the sky like fractured glass. The 13th reflections Voidsent are born of the same wounded god's mangled essence, torn loose from purpose, now writhing in the entropy's grip. Their forms are not whole, they are echoes without a source, screaming in the dark with no face to scream into. And there in the final frames of his death, Zenos becomes one, not a hero's end, a parasite's metamorphosis. The light had a texture, cold, greedy. It clung to the air like ash before a storm, the kind that stains bones and never leaves. The 13th reflections Voidsent, those broken things, do not die at the asterisk unravel asterisk, spilling their corruption into the void's endless hunger. Their survival is not life but asterisk absence asterisk, a negation that swells until even the stars forget their names. Zenos' dissolution mirrors this perfectly. Too perfect, did the light consume him, or was it a mask, a mimicry of surrender? The final days return like a scar reopening, they always have, always will. The first dawn's light cannot outlast the void's patience. When the 13th reflection was first sundered, the world drowned in lesser versions of its false Zenoses, false wars, all repeating the same failure. Now the light of his sacrifice is the next iteration, a familiar shape made new by the void's old deceit. The heroes see a martyr, the void sees a puppet. What does a fractured god do in the dark? He asterisk listens asterisk. His fragments burrow into the cracks of the source's defenses, whispering in the language of entropy. The Voidsent swarm not as enemies, but as kin. Their twisted forms are blueprints for what Zenos will become, a hive of horrors, each a blade aimed at the source's heart. The war is not ending, it is asterisk reframing asterisk. The void's architects never die, they become the walls, the light fades, the void waits. And somewhere in the silence between heartbeats, the 13th reflection's shadow stirs, not dead, not whole, just asterisk working asterisk. The 13th reflection's darkened halls hold a secret even scholars skim. Encyclopedia Eärzia Roman 3 names its denizens twisted by darkness into Voidsent husks. A footnote, a whisper, yet here lies the key. Zenos Galvus bears the same corruption, not a hero, a vessel. His blade cleaves light and shadow as one. He freed Dema. He shattered Ala-Mhigo's chains, acts of salvation or Voidsent sabotage. The source's rejoining hung in the balance, and Zenos, that fractured echo, struck the war's fatal fractures. His victories were the void's victories. His death a performance. In Endwalker's final act, the warrior of light met their equal shadow, not a foe, a fragment. Zenos' voice cracked with two wills, his own and the darkness that birthed him. To kill him was to sever a thread. The tapestry kept weaving. What stirs in the source's scar? A corpse, a phantom, no, a strategist. The void does not perish. It adapts, it asterisk becomes asterisk. Zenos, unmade yet persistent, walks the line between warlord and weapon, his every step a paradox. A bridge between the source's light and the void's endless hunger. The 13th reflections void sent were not outliers, they were prototypes. Proof of concept, the darkness that warped them still coils in Zenos' core. Every strike he lands, every truth he speaks carries dual intent, heroism and heresy. The war for the source is not over. It has asterisk evolved asterisk. The void's shadow no longer marches as an army. It pulses in the heart of a man who should be dead, a man who breathes because the war needs him. Because the balance needs asterisk unbalancing asterisk. Zenos' Unbound will is no accident, it is the void's final, most elegant trick. To fight the source's rejoining from within, to make salvation its own undoing. And webline to the double bind sheer as the warrior's shadow walks beside us. Still, the question lingers. Who in this war is truly free? The Ascians did not shatter the void, they fed it. Their rejoining project a violent stitch to mend ether's fraying, soul became the void's loom. A machine to weave its shadow wider. Zenos' sacrifice was no act of heroism, it was a rupture. A failed severance that left his will stranded between realms, twisted into something the void could wear like a mask. His name now whispers through the void scent, a fractured echo, a puppet with a memory of wanting to burn the source down. The war did not end, it paused breathless in the space between victories. The warriors watched the horizon, certain the storm has passed. But the void's wrath is not a storm, it is a slow, patient rot. The Ascians thought they could bind ether's fragments with logic, with order. Instead, they gave the void a mirror, a face. Zenos' consciousness, half erased, became its perfect weapon, a martyr who never died, a leader who never led. Just a hollow pulling levers he no longer understands. What does it mean to destroy a god when the god becomes the silence between heartbeats? The void sent swarm not as invaders but as inheritors. Their numbers grow where Zenos' doubts fester. Every battle one leaves new scars the void can feed on. The source, that hollow prize, still pulses, still waits. The cycle is not broken. It is delayed, its gears greased with the blood of a man who wanted to die so the world might live. And Yaudir, blind warrior shear for the hero you think you buried, but his hands are not clean, his eyes are not whole. The void does not need to roar to conquer, it only needs to whisper through the cracks in your victories. Zenos ye Galvus is not dead, he is the wound, the anchor. The unbroken thread between the Ascians' hubris and the void's endless hunger, and the war, it never ended. It only learned to wear a new face. Tell me in this silence between wars who is still fighting, and who is already lost. Zenos' blade cleaved darkness in Dema, his voice stirred hope in Ala Mhigo. Both acts burned like stars in the void's endless night. Yet heroism here is a flickering torch held by a ghost. The warrior of light's equal shadow did not perish at Il-Mheg. It fractured, a shard of the void's will threading through every vow the Scions made. Their love, that metaphysical force, see how easily it bends a double-edged grief. See how the void feasts on paradox, a traitor masquerading as savior, his martyrdom a fuse for wars yet unkindled. The Scions bind wounds only the void has carved. They name him free, but freedom is a cage when the key was never yours. The war for the source grinds on, not because light fails, but because shadows are taught to yearn. And Zenos, that unbound echo, walks the line between requiem and rebellion. What if the void's truest victory is a hero who believes he chose? The war never ended. It only learned to wear a new face. Tell Muhan the source splinters again who will blade, and who will finally wake. The war never ended, it only folded inward, like a shadow swallowing its own edge. Zenos ye Galvus did not perish at the hands of the Scions. His soul shattered, yes, but into 1,000 jagged mirrors, each one a prism for the void's hunger. What you saw as his final breath was but the first syllable of a longer lie. the void does not forget. It does not rest, it stitches its will into the dying gasp of its champions, turning their ruin into a rook's gambit. Zenos' blade, once a symbol of resolve, now hangs as a noose in the void's gallery of tricks. His voice, once thunder, now whispers through the marrow of voidsent legions, guiding their march not with fury, but with the patient cunning of a man who knows the hour of reckoning is already past. You think the final days were banished? Look closer. The source's light dims in places where Zenos' shadow once fell. Cities that cheered his name now crumble under harvests of ash. The cycle was never stayed, it was rerouted, like a river forced into a new bed by a dam of brittle hope. The Scions' victory, if it is won, is written in sand. What does it mean to be unbound? To exist as both architect and artifact of a war you cannot lose. Zenos' fracture is no tragic flaw, it is a lever. Every voidsent ambush, every breach in the Amarok gates, every Scion cut down by a blade they cannot see it is his hand, or the hand he left behind. The void's will is not a storm. It is a slow seep, a tide that rises by losing itself in the cracks of what was. The ledger closes here. The cost is not in gold or blood, but in time. The war for the source is over. It has been over since the first voidsent claw broke through the veil. What remains is the reckoning of those who dare to wake, and the sleepers who will never again be whole. The void does not end in death. Zenos ye Galvus breathes still not as a man, but as a wound. A fissure in time's brittle skin. His final roar in Endwalker's ash was not an end, but a threshold. The dragon song war fought to shackle him, became the chain he twisted to serve his own unraveling. Every blade turned against the Ascians fed the rejoining. Every sacrifice at Astera's fall etched new runes in the source's dying heart. The seventh umbral calamity was no accident, it was a mirror. Each reflection cycle of fire and shadow is the void's script, rewritten endlessly. What we call history is its echo chamber. Fandaniel's return from the final days is not salvation, it is proof. The source, thought pristine, bleeds the same corruption. The calamity's storm will rise again, not as a tale, but as a law. The war for the source is no mortal struggle. It is the void's sacrament. Every victory curdles to ash. Every martyr becomes kindling. The Ascians are not villains, they are instruments. And Zenos, he is the hymn, the scythe, the shadow that outlives the flame. The war for the source is not ending. It is learning your name. Zenos' blade did not sever the void's thread. His final breath may have been a whisper of voidsent ploy to bind the war's clock. The Scions see a hero's end. What if they see a lie? The source's reckoning looms, yet the void thrives on delay. Every clash, every dirge plays into its design. Zenos' fractured echo whispers still, an unseen hand in the ash. The ledger of his deeds is inked in shadows, not light. The war bends, but does it break? Or does his name now serve the void's next move? Zenos' blade did not sever the void's thread. His final breath may have been a whisper of voidsent ploy to bind the war's clock. The Scions see a hero's end. What if they see a lie? The source's reckoning looms, yet the void thrives on delay. Every clash, every dirge plays into its design. Zenos' fractured echo whispers still, an unseen hand in the ash. The ledger of his deeds is inked in